That's 100% true, and I feel pretty much the same way that Patrick does in that regard. I get a very strong imposter syndrome when I look at either my follower base, be it on TikTok, Instagram, or whatever, or look at the community Discord that we have, which is somewhere near 1,500 people in it, right? It's
insane.
It's insane. It really is. And I'm thinking to myself, why the hell are these people following me, listening to me? Why are they watching me? Like, I'm some dude in his 40s who's talking about a mental health condition. Right? I don't feel I'm that knowledgeable. I certainly do not have the background that you do. The only thing I'm doing is I'm just sharing the experience that I have, and people seem to be able to relate to that, and that boggles my mind. Like, I understand it's the feeling of I'm not alone, but I mean, like, who am I? I am nobody.
So let me jump in on that. This is a big thing that gets my imposter syndrome going too. It's based off what Spaz just said. Talking about my educational background. I graduated with my degrees in April. This is a very common experience. Somebody who's new in a field, not feeling like they are as educated as other people in the field because I don't have that experience. That is doubled by the fact that I am still a stay-at-home parent and it will be for the next couple of years. The education that I have does provide me with a insight into things, but I'm not practicing. I'm not a practicing epidemiologist. I'm no longer a practicing nurse. When people pull my educational background into things, my mind automatically starts thinking that people are going to see through me and my education because I don't have experience in the field beyond what we've done with school.
As you guys hear, we all suffer with this all the time.
Oh, big time.
And it's regular. Like, we beat the hell out of each other on a regular basis, trying to remind each other every time we're in here, our imposter syndrome is out in full force.
Oh, yeah.
I talk about I look at myself and I'm sitting next to two creators who are at over 100,000 and going to be over 100,000 very soon. But I'm sitting down there, haven't even broke over the highest number I've ever made on TikTok so far. So, I struggle and I don't, I look at you guys and you're doing the editing and you're doing the work on this podcast and I'm over here managing a Patreon. Like, so my imposter syndrome is telling me, what the fuck are you really doing here? Why are you even here? Right? They're doing all this work and you just show up and talk.
These are the times that we have to jump in and remind Patrick that there's a reason why, that this was a pre-agreed upon level of work for each person for particular reasons.
Exactly. I've been editing audio for 25 plus years.
And the reason I took over YouTube was not just because Spaz is already doing the editing and it's unfair to unload everything on him, but I needed hands-on experience before I started my mental health project for YouTube.
It is nothing against you guys. Like, I understand.
Oh, no, we don't take it that way.
Like personally, logically in my brain, I understand every reason why we are doing what we are doing and how we are doing it. I still feel like a fake and a fraud every time I show up because I don't feel like I am here to do anything but talk, and I don't even do that well.
And I feel this, it's funny you say that too, because I feel pretty much the same way. Because you remember, for a little behind the scenes knowledge for everybody is, when I'm doing editing, I color code. Because I have us on 3 separate lines. So I've got myself.
God, it's like opening a bag of Skittles. It's fucking sexy.
It is. So I've got myself in blue. I've got Patrick in yellow, and I've got Ley in green. And it's funny because Ley,
it's our favorite colors.
Lee's always like, there's so much green in there. I'm like, yes, but
there it is.
And she bitches. I hate my voice. I hate that I talk so much. But the thing is, you're the one who's delivering the pertinent information. Patrick and I are the ones who are kind of sitting back and whatnot. And not even that. It's Patrick has a lot of his own experience that he's throwing in there, and I'm the one who actually speaks the least.
I'm feeling uncomfortable with the energy we're creating in the podcast today.
You can feel as uncomfortable as you want.
There we go.
There it is.
We got it again. There you go, folks.
But I'm actually the one that speaks the least, right? So in my head, it's like you're the one who has the least amount of important shit to say. So there's another part where the imposter syndrome comes out as we're sitting here recording this.
But this also works the opposite way. The last episode that was recorded was shorter because I purposefully tried to not talk as much.
No, it was shorter because I fucked up. That's why it was shorter.
I mean, that's part. The audio issue was part of it also, but I tried not to talk as much in the previous episode because I was embarrassed. I was in my head about it thinking that I'm not bringing as much as these guys think that I'm bringing to this podcast. And that for whatever reason, that my own personal experience with invisible illnesses and sorry, this is admitting a hard truth. Hi, emotion. I don't like you. Go away.
Fucking A.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our podcast, where you accuse us of calling you out all the time. We're going to sit here and call ourselves out right in front of you. You don't feel so bad because we're going to take the fucking heat first.
Right?
Even though I suffer with an unseen illness, both mental and physical, I felt like my experience was not worth what other people's experiences are. And I'm, especially when it comes down to the physical disability, because I'm so fucking new to it. I have just been diagnosed. Despite the fact that EDS is something I've had my entire life, I've just never had a name for it. But the fact that it was a new diagnosis kept me from talking about it, because my experience was invalid.
Patrick, you have something to share with the class?
And you're saying all this about your EDS, and this is what I feel about my ADHD. I was diagnosed not even 5 months ago. I started talking about it on TikTok before I had an official diagnosis. And I have a channel now with 20,000 followers and an actual business now registered with the state for ADHD. How am I fucking doing this? How the fuck am I doing this? Because
what makes us different than the people we call out?
Right? But it's just, it's insane, and it feels so, I feel so fake. I feel so fake.
What makes us different is that we're not invalidating others. We're trying to lift others.
We invalidate ourselves. Yeah.
Now, I do want to take and do my job in this podcast, and that's steer this conversation into talking about how imposter syndrome can lead to invalidation. And I'm going to go ahead and start with an example that I have from when I was in the military. I had a squad leader. His name is Sergeant Green. I hope you choke on a fucking ice cube and die.
I still don't understand that expression.
Because if he chokes on the ice cube, he dies, and then it melts, and you don't have a murder weapon or anything like that.
I understand that part, but I mean, like, it's going to melt before he chokes on it, is it not?
Not in my imaginary world, it's not.
It's kind of like ice bullets, right? You shoot them with an ice bullet, and then it just melts.
Exactly.
I hear you.
Exactly. It's like stabbing somebody with an icicle.
Remember, kids, we here at Wait What Was I Doing the podcast do not condone murder in any way, shape, or form.
Unless it's imaginary, in which case it's a good outlet.
Unless you're playing Call of Duty.
Call of Duty is also a good outlet.
Or Among Us, where Lee will give you knife hugs.
I do. I give the best knife hugs on Twitch. But me and Sergeant Green, we didn't get along at all. And he purposefully tried to hold me back from getting promoted from specialist to sergeant. And what it took for me to actually go to the board was a sergeant first class pulling me aside and saying, I see what's happening. I know that he is making you write your own counseling statements every month, and I don't think that you should be a specialist anymore. I think you should be a sergeant. And we laid out this whole plan to trick him and get me to go to the promotion board for sergeant. So I had to start writing in my counselings that I was going to the board in a few months, and I had to start studying, and he never read them. He just signed his name. We did this for a couple of months, and then finally I put in there that I was going to the board next month, and he signed off on it. There was nothing he could do. I was going to the board. He signed off on it. If he admitted that he did not read that counseling statement, or that he made me write that counseling statement, he was not doing his job, because that was not my responsibility. It was his. So he couldn't admit. So he tried to sabotage me for that entire month. But working with the sergeant first class, not only did I make it to the promotion board, but I also passed the promotion board. And once you, in the Army, once you make sergeant, or once you are a specialist promotable, you just have to wait for a sequence number to come up. And then you get promoted. 2 months later, I got promoted to sergeant. Sergeant Green was not happy about this at all. The day that I got promoted, in front of my father, he told me that I was not cut out to be a sergeant, and that I was taking a slot from a more qualified individual. And that cut me deeply. And it made me start believing that I was not worth the rank that I had worked hard to achieve. Because I'm sure Patrick can attest to this. A fucking promotion board is not the easiest thing to go through. You have to study your ass off.
Constantly.
And then you have to go sit in front of a panel and they ask you question after question after question, trying to get you to fuck up.
Not only do they ask you question after question after question, you walk in and you show up and they fucking give you the evil eye, checking out your uniform as well to make sure
they're
that's all
looking for
in
any
red
discrepancies.
So they're fucking looking you up head to toe, eyeing up everything on you, and then they make you, recite creeds that you have to remember.
The NCO creed, which is long.
Fucking long. And you have to do this by memory. And then they start asking you questions. So it is a long, drawn-out process, and it is draining.
I got asked questions that weren't even pertinent to my particular job because I was in an air defense artillery unit, even though I was nuclear, biological, chemical. I got asked questions about air defense.
Why?
Because it was meant to rattle me. They do this because it's intended to rattle the individual, and then when they go back to asking questions that I should know the answer to, dependent on how long I take to give an answer or if I mess up those answers, it's how I respond under pressure.
So these boards are stress tests too. They're a test to see how you can lead with under pressure and under pushback and things like that. So they're testing leadership skills as well. Do I like the way they do them? Personally, no. I think the fucking boards are terrible. But I understand the process behind it, being a person who was involved in these boards.
For those that have know nothing about the United States Army, when you make the jump from specialist to sergeant, that is a major jump. That is a jump that some people never get to. That is the jump from junior enlisted to a non-commissioned officer. That is the official point at which responsibility falls directly on your shoulders, and you become responsible for other people. So trying to sabotage the way that I thought about myself was a dick move on my sergeant's part, because it invalidated everything that I did to get to where I was at, and the fact that I was a very good NCO. The fact that I've had first sergeants tell me that if I had continued to be in the military, which was the plan, which is why it's a little hard to talk about.
I know that feeling.
I would have gone far. But my first year, especially my first year as a sergeant, was really hard because that particular invalidation set off a level of imposter syndrome within me that stayed, and it was persistent, and I didn't believe that I deserved this rank that I had worked so hard to achieve. That's my story.
That shit's rough.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to point out, though, that with ADHD, we're more susceptible to gaslighting. We are more susceptible to falling into abusive patterns, not just with spouses, but with the people that we are around on a daily basis.
Right.
What happened between me and Sergeant Green was essentially an abusive relationship between a subordinate and a higher-up.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
In the criminal justice system, Squirrel-based offenses are considered especially heinous. In the Squirrel Station, the dedicated detectives who investigate these vicious felonies are members of an elite squad known as the Special Squirrel Unit. These are their stories.
This week, Pyrox and Danny investigate the death of a moose, while Sergeants Katie and Chris track a deadly art thief. Watch a new episode of Squirrel Squad 6, Tuesday nights at 9, only on Channel 80 in HD.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you this breaking news story. I'm your on-the-scene reporter, Falsey News. Police have stumbled across the truckload of nuts and cookies stolen earlier this week from the Golden Acorns Farms. Chief Boyardee has released details on the main suspects, Schuster McGee and Notorious Nate. More on this story tonight at 11:30, following a special episode of Squirrel Squad 6.
Are we done beating each other over the head over imposter syndrome?
I mean, over imposter syndrome, we got another section to go ahead and beat yourselves up with.
Yay!
We're only how deep into the episode now? Come on, we still have 2 fucking sections to go.
I signed up for this shit.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, the abuse is real. Well, what are we talking about this time?
This would be executive dysfunction.
Yes, that's exactly what this is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Moving on.
Because one of the important things to know about executive dysfunction is typically listed as the inability to get up and do the thing. It is partly responsible for our motivation. And when we lack motivation, we can't get up to do the thing. But Executive dysfunction affects a lot more than that. It affects how we speak because it deals with